Today, we are giving you a rookie running back that we think you should be buying in your leagues before his price goes up. This is somebody that we've identified as a good value in Dynasty leagues, so we think you'll be better buying him now and even reaping the benefits of getting his production this year or as early as this year, or even getting some value insulation long-term if he earns a spot on his roster and as the starting running back.
Oh, he will.
Yeah, I'm thinking he will.
He's a starter.
Make sure, support us, drop a like on the video, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel as well. We've got in-depth Dynasty research and roster advice, so we appreciate it if you subscribe to Dynasty Domain. And we're going to talk about a rookie running back today that was a little bit overshadowed. And when I say shadow, I mean probably the biggest shadow that you could have had cast on you from a prospect standpoint, because he was shadowed by
Dwayne McBride.
Yep. And whoever the backup running back is.
No, I'm kidding.
No, this is going to be a guy shadowed by Bijan Robinson, who was...
He was the shadow, too.
He was the best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley. One of the best we've seen. He got top 10 draft capital. And behind him at Texas, behind this very, very elite prospect, is Roschon Johnson, who's going to be the topic of our video today. And again, Roschon Johnson, a guy that not everybody was super high on, or not everybody had on their radar, because again, when you're talking about looking at the Texas offense, and you're talking about evaluating what their college production was like, Roschon Johnson was obviously a backup to Bijan Robinson. So we don't have a lot of sample size, but we're going to get into why we think he's a good value. Roschon Johnson is somebody that right now you're seeing go in the early second, probably. I haven't seen him go in the first. I don't know if you guys have, but probably early mid-second is where he's going at. And we're going to look at the team situation that Roschon Johnson is going to step into. This is going to be a primary argument for why you should be adding Roschon Johnson in your leagues. The Bears ran the ball 558 times last year. That was second only to Atlanta, who ran the ball 559 times. So they essentially were, first in rushing volume.
And is that including Fields' 160 attempts?
It includes all of his attempts.
So excluding Fields, they still ran the ball 400 times.
Yes.
Excluding Fields.
Yeah.
That's insane.
David Montgomery accounted for 201 of those carries. Khalil Herbert had 129. And again, like he said, Fields had 160. David Montgomery, I mean, obviously now he's not with the Bears. He's over playing in Detroit. But he was not a super efficient back last year when you look at his efficiency numbers in that offense. In fact, you've seen a lot of people will prop up the yards per carry statistic for Khalil Herbert as an example of why those backs maybe should have been switched last year. But with the uptick in volume for David Montgomery, he averaged 3.9 true yards per carry, which was good for 50th in the league, which is not super good. 0.74 fantasy points per opportunity, which was good for 52nd, which is, again, not good. And but despite being that bad and that inefficient, and David Montgomery, I think we can agree, not somebody that was special from a fantasy perspective last year. 11.1 fantasy points per game, which was 24th. He was an RB2 in PPR leagues. So still, you're talking about inefficiency,
bad.
like an RB5 inefficiency and an RB2. So there's a huge disconnect between how efficient he is and why he's actually producing. Volume alone propped up Montgomery as a flex option in Dynasty leagues. So when you're talking about Roschon Johnson, he was really efficient at Texas when you look at what he did. And obviously he had limited carries there as well. But give us some stats on what he did at Texas in terms of, how efficient he was.
Yeah, I mean, Roschon is very, very contrary to David Montgomery in that Bears offense. In Texas, Roschon was just the definition of efficient with the small amount of share or opportunity that he got there in that offense behind Bijan. 554 carries or 554 yards on 93 carries last season, which was good for dang near 6 yards per carry in the Big 12. So that's a very impressive feat there. Extremely powerful runner. He makes defenders miss at an elite rate and breaks tackles just
better than anyone.
Left and right. Better than
anyone. He was first in all the FBS and missed tackles per attempt.
Yep. And that's
first.
The definition of efficient. Very, very low mileage, obviously, because he was behind Bijan that entire time. So don't be too scared of his, late declare, because again, Bijan, and it really really a testament to his character too, as a player, a team player in that offense.
Not to transfer.
Wanting to stay there, wanting to contribute to the offense. He could have transferred anywhere he wanted and been, probably
one of the better backs in the nation.
Better backs
he was, yeah, and he was even as a backup, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the biggest questions we're going to have here for him is his receiving upside. He didn't show much of that, but again, usage: 14 catches, 128 yards, which is 9.1 yards per reception. That's very good. So something that I did hear from a reputable source was that when you want to look for elite receiving upside from a running back and you're like, okay, that guy is a keeper in the NFL, you want to see them well over 6 yards per reception. So if they're flirting with 9 or 10, like an Austin Eckler, then you're starting to play with a guy who you may want to have on your roster long term and is probably going to last a while in the NFL. Roschon Johnson at 9.14 yards per reception that's flirting with a guy that could be a keeper in that offense.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even really worry too much about volume, because even in 2022, Bijan Robinson, who we've said is one of the best receivers at running back ever, only had 19 receptions last year. So it's not like they were checking down often in that Texas offense. But when Roschon was on the field, he still did his part in grabbing 12 receptions.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking about that 6 yards per reception mark that we've kind of identified as we're doing more research on these running backs. You're looking at a guy, Jahmyr Gibbs, who right on the dot, 9 yards per reception.
Yeah. That's really what we want to look for.
So from an efficiency standpoint, absolutely. And again, he's going into a backfield with a ton of opportunity. And honestly, I think you guys would agree with me. I don't think Khalil Herbert is a true alpha workhorse back. I think he's plenty talented, good. And I think he's going to be good in a committee like he was last year. But I think this is going to be similar to what you saw with Kenneth Walker when he was used more. His efficiency declined. I think that if you give Khalil Herbert that workhorse, help me, workload. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Workload.
Thank you. That's it.
There you go.
His efficiency is going to drop. He's not going to be near as efficient as he was last year. He's somebody that also had a higher breakaway run rate. You saw that with him a lot last year. He was good for some of those big plays. And because of that, Roschon Johnson's going onto a team and going into a situation where, from a stability standpoint in the passing game, they haven't really found their footing yet. And Justin Fields as a passer hasn't really found his footing. And from a volume perspective in the passing game, also, again, not really found his footing. Now, do I expect Justin Fields to run the ball as much as he did last year? Honestly, I do not. I think they're going to make it a point for him to try to stay in the pocket and pass a little bit more.
He'll still get more than 100, though.
Oh, yeah, but he had 160 this year. If that went down to 130 even.
Historical.
Yeah. And he's got workhorse size. He's obviously big enough. He averaged 4.3 yards after contact per attempt, and Bijan himself was at 4.1. He was more efficient after contact than Bijan was. Which is insane.
That speaks volumes.
And you mentioned he was first in the FBS in missed tackles forced per attempt. Now, let's talk about some cons to Roschon Johnson. Obviously, when we're evaluating running backs according to our metrics, according to some of the popular indicators of what makes for a good running back prospect, he does have some cons. So talk about those so we can kind of be impartial here and you can play devil's advocate for us.
People like to see their running backs breaking out at an early age and producing, immediately coming into a team and taking whatever job there is and really running away with it like Bijan did. The problem is Roschon never did that. We've discussed this entire video, he was behind one of the best running back prospects of all times. So, you said offer a con, and that's one of the biggest cons for him, but it really makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
He's an older prospect for that same reason. He stayed there in Texas for 4 years. So a lot of people would see that as a con. They want to see their running backs being confident at 20 and 21 years old that they can come into the NFL and dominate. And we did not see that with Roschon Johnson. He obviously stayed an extra year. And he had reasons for that, but he still got 4th round draft capital.
Yep. Which isn't, when I'm looking at that, I'm like, that's not the gold standard of draft capital.
That's his last. Yeah, that's his, really, in my eyes, that's the only true con to him. Those other two things we can write off because of Bijan Robinson, but a 4th round draft capital for a running back is not really much to be proud of. But, to put that in perspective, they stuck with David Montgomery for 4 years, for 4 years, right?
Yeah.
He was drafted in the 3rd round. We are the first to tell you that a guy with 4th round draft capital is not a safe dynasty asset. We talked about Michael Carter and Tyler Algier and Damian Pierce just last year, guys being drafted past the 3rd round, and we said, don't buy into them because they're likely to get replaced. But with Roschon Johnson, the Bears in particular have had a history of running with their of running with these guys that they drafted later.
Then there's a stark difference that I want to highlight here between some of those situations where, the reason we didn't like Damian Pierce last year is because he was sliding up into the 1st round. of Dynasty rookie drafts. And that's not happening with Roschon Johnson.
He's
like
mid to late second.
For everything,
Yeah.
like
He's
we
going
would
at
have
the
expected
206 in
him.
our ADP right
We would
now.
have expected him the night we saw him drafted to start jumping up into the 111, 112 range like last year. But instead, what's happened is, again, he's being drafted in the early to mid second. And when you're talking about a guy who could offer some contending value for you this year, that's a bargain. I mean, anywhere after the 203, in my opinion, is a bargain. And I'm getting him in the late second. Like, he's falling to the late second quite a bit. I think people just aren't realizing. I mean, he easily, in my opinion, he should be easily going over Devon Achane. Like, I think he said going into
quite easily
a situation where he's going to get more volume. He's got better size to handle the volume. He's going to be on an offense that's going to be creative with how they use him, but also, I mean, he's going to have a lot of rushing volume there. So, in my opinion, like that's where the disconnect is. Like, I think I'm taking Roschon Johnson short term and even long term. Devon Achane, a guy that got better draft capital by a round, but again, when you're talking about the longevity of somebody his size, I mean, Roschon Johnson does have that workhorse size, which answers some of the questions we have about Devon Achane. He's really similar to Dameon Pierce. Like this is last year we were telling you not to buy Dameon Pierce because how far he slid up. Now we're telling you this guy's going in the late second. Why is he not sliding up? I think he's just as good a prospect as Dameon Pierce was. I know there are a lot of people that were really like particular about Dameon Pierce being underrated and how they did misuse him at Florida and whatever. But with Roschon Johnson, like I think you could make the argument. And the dude sat behind Bijan Robinson. If Bijan Robinson's the prospect that you think he is, then this guy, I mean, you have no clue. He's been hyper efficient with the opportunity that he's been given. Now he's coming to the NFL, and he could really prove himself here.
And I think all the reasons you could give to not like Roschon Johnson, you should be saying those, twice over for Khalil Herbert. The guy stayed 5 years in college. He never had more than 10 receptions in all of those 5 years. I mean, I'm not seeing what's the difference here. One of these guys is the shiny new toy. Flashed a lot, he forced the most tackles in all of college football last year. And Khalil Herbert obviously has been very efficient in the NFL. But I think if we're looking at 400 rushing attempts to go around, look at David Montgomery, look at Khalil Herbert last year. If you're getting one of those guys at the 2.6 at 22 years old, just this year, that's a very small investment. I'm loving that personally. I could not leave drafts without him if I had any picks in the mid-second, even in the early second.
Yeah, it's honestly just so funny to me that for a team that passes it less than anyone and runs it more than anyone as an offense, you end up seeing Roschon Johnson, the running back one in that offense, being the one that's undervalued. And the wide receivers in the worst passing offense in the NFL last year all skyrocketing up draft boards. Like it just, Tyler Scott, like, come on, guys. Roschon Johnson is it in that Bears offense. I think just so too. Is.
And look at David Montgomery's usage last year in the receiving game as well. Like he had 40 targets and he reeled in 34 of those, and he had 316 receiving yards. That's 9 yards per reception there. There's that magic 9 number again. Yep. And then he also had a touchdown. So but you're talking an extra 75 points from his
36 receptions.
34,
and Khalil Herbert had 14. So it's pretty obvious that Herbert is not the guy in the receiving game.
Have receiving upside.
I mean, that's just another reason. Like you want to add on top more reasons that you should be drafting Roschon Johnson.
Oh no, he had 9 last year. I'm sorry.
Oh, he had 9. Oh, that's not a lot either. So I mean, it's pretty clear how the difference in how they use David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. And since they still have Khalil Herbert, don't you think they might be drafting the guy to replace Montgomery? Who again, if Roschon Johnson is even 25% more efficient than one of the least efficient backs in the league last year.
He's an RB2 easy.
He's scoring 13 points per game.
Easy.
Like, I just think there's a lot of upside from a short-term standpoint. And also, I think there's a chance that he has fallen a little bit because NFL teams just have not seen enough of him yet. And like I said, as Simon highlighted, there are some cons from our own running back evaluation process. However, I think a lot of this can be negated by the fact that he was backing up Bijan Robinson. So
yeah, we will be the first to preach draft capital is king. Draft capital is king always and forever. But again, when you're looking at a guy who's going mid to late second, at that point you're looking for contending pieces that score fantasy points and that you can either sell high later or they can actually turn out to be something in the future. At the running back position, I don't know if any of us are counting on Roschon being a long-term option.
Probably not.
In the Bears offense because of the amount of draft capital that they have in the future.
But he's definitely a good flip right now.
But he is totally one of the best coin flips you can have.
If people pull a Dameon Pierce with him,
exactly. I think it'll be worse.
Yeah, and a guy that can actually take a bell cow workload as opposed to Devon Achane, like, come on.
And he's a guy, if I draft with the 206, and at any point in the season, any team offers me a 24 first for him, I mean,
you're good. That's it. That's all you need.
You made a
That's all I
profit.
got to do.
Just take the safe profit there.
Yes.
And if you don't get it in the middle of the season, like odds are he can help you win this season, and then you can sell him next season. You can do the same thing with Dameon Pierce right now.
It's called playing the market, guys.
Yeah, and it's a really good thing to do. And with Roschon Johnson, again, a guy that at his price, given his circumstances and given his efficiency metrics in college, we really like adding to our dynasty rosters right now. So in terms of trading for Roschon Johnson, obviously, if you're trading, an asset that's declining, that's worth a mid to late second in value, and getting Roschon Johnson back, we're highly encouraging that trade just because of the potential increase you could get in the value of Roschon Johnson. And if you're in your rookie draft still and you see him sliding to the mid second and the late second, I mean, I'm not sure there's a whole lot of people that you can take over him, with the exception of maybe a Josh Downs, with the exception of, I think I'm taking over Sam Laporta even, like who's one of my favorite ones. Michael Mayer, who should be going, the turn. So again, I think this is a guy that if you're targeting him, you're probably going to end up winning big in less than a year or a year because you're going to be able to flip him for a lot more than he's worth now. He'll be worth more than a mid-late second, I can promise you that. So, all right. Let us know what you think in the comments about Roschon Johnson. We want to know your opinion on what he did at Texas. We want to know your opinion on his short-term production value as well. Do us a favor, show some support, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. We have in-depth dynasty research and analysis and roster advice coming your way all off season long, so make sure you're subscribed as well. We appreciate you watching. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.